Thank you for the introduction. So I'll speak a little bit about titanium in additive manufacturing, what the powder its influence on the product will be. But first, I have eco-friendly news. We're moving into a new building which has insulation. It has solar cells on the roof, so it's much better than the old building, which is quite obsolete. So now we're moving from the Bismarckstraße to the Robert-Matthies-Straße. That sounds far, but it's just 10 meters in front of the old building. And our foundation is not called after Robert-Matthies-Straße, but it's called after Robert Matthies, not after Robert Matthies Senior was the founder, but it's the S doesn't stand for senior neither. It stands for Stiftung, which means foundation. So to make sure everybody understands, we have the foundation twice in our name. So for the S and the F. It was founded in 1985, so 40 years ago. So we have a jubileum this year. We got first accreditation in 1995. Then Robert Matthies Jr., so the son of Robert Matthies Sr., became our president. And now we have the third generation with Gabriela Matthies, who's our president of the board. And in the meantime, we also got the Type C accreditation, so we can more quickly adapt new methods and have them offered in the accredited range. Some certificates, ISO and 9001 and ISO 17025. That's our team. That's the most important. We are 30 something people. Most of them are engineers or have a technical background. We have quite many PhDs. And what we're doing is three things. We're offering testing, we are doing research, and we have the tech transfer. So we're giving lectures at high schools, etc. And within the testing, we want to support our clients in each production step, so from R&D to planning to logistics to production, sales, after sales. So when everything went wrong at the end, nevertheless, so we can do the failure analysis. So let's start with the additive manufacturing part. As the speakers before from CRIT told us, we have large possibilities, which basically complexity for free. We can produce, not we, but our partners can produce patient-specific implants. They can produce implants made of various materials, so which is suitable the best. But the question is always, what's really the physical properties? Are they similar, or are they different from the material as we know it? And of course, second question is, how reproducible is the whole process? I'll present results from two projects we had together with the M4M Center. The M4M Center, you can find a booth upstairs as well, or Nicolas Boudouin is sitting in the audience. So within the first project, we investigated two different powder suppliers, the humidity, what effect has the drying, or multiple sieving. What's the effect of these influences on the final product? And within the following collaboration, we had different powder conditions investigated. So within the thesis, we had two different powder suppliers, Sysma and Sandvik. Humidity was dry with lower than 10% or higher than 10%, and sieving as a starting material. Process was laser metal fusion in a Sysma device, different orientations. Some tensile samples were in laying, some were up as a standing orientation, and there was a post-processing. On the product side, we investigated the bulk, so inclusions, how well were the grains sintered together, then the composition of powder and of the final product, and last but not least, the mechanical properties. If you look at the powder, we see quite some differences. We see also relatively inhomogeneous distribution, so we have larger grains, smaller grains. Having a closer look, we still see very small powder particles, while we have also larger ones. And within a cross-section, you probably find even pores within powders. So if you want to have a pore-free material at the end and you start with a powder containing pores, it may be difficult. Of course, powder can be then classified, and also typical powder parameters like aspect ratio can be determined. So the aspect ratio is the length divided by the width, so quite simple. And if something is below 1.5, it's round. If it's you have also oval-shaped powder particles or even elongated. And within this powder bed, of course, the elongated will kind of disturb, while the round ones, they're flowing nicely. Larger particles will disturb, while smaller particles will flow nicely. Maybe you want to have a homogeneous distribution. Maybe it's even good to have smaller and larger particles together, so you have the smaller ones filling the gaps. But you have to know what with what you're working. On the final product, you always find some particulate residues. Some are still adhering on the surface, but might come off at some point. So you can check the cleaning procedure and see how much is really then, after normal cleaning, coming off at the end. We can look at grain structures, which is quite different from forged alloys. So we have here alpha martensitic grain, which is quite different from the bulk you expect from a nice titanium, aluminum, vanadium alloy. And yeah, pores within the samples. Powders might have some elemental distributions. For instance, how much iron do we find in a powder? So here, Sandvik had in this plot a little bit more iron than the other one. Or there might be some differences within hydrogen content as well. So hydrogen can lead to embrittlement. So we want to have hydrogen below a certain limit to not face embrittlement, hydrogen embrittlement at the end. And after the print job, we had some small differences. So hydrogen was increased for the others as well after the print job. Oxygen was slightly increased in some cases, or nitrogen in others. So we've seen quite some differences in the composition, but what's the effect on the mechanical properties, which is at the end the most critical parameter. So we did tensile tests, as I said, with samples which were printed in laying direction or in upright standing direction. We determined the classical parameters like yield strength, tensile strength, or elongation at break. The strengths show some difference between standing and laying. So laying had some higher tensile strength, and ductility was slightly higher, but highly scattered overall. So we cannot really, there's a tendency that laying was better in this case than standing. So we do not have kind of homogeneous material properties at the end. The ductility was not ideal in these samples, even with the heat treatment. The heat treatment did not change too much in ductility in this case. But this is an old project and development has been going on. It's been going on. After all, we can do the fracture analysis to look at the fracture surfaces in detail. So we see some steps over here, or this Bruchwaben in German, this top structures. The other one was quite similar, but there have been some pores on the fracture surface. So these are kind of weaker points, and fractures like going through weaker points. Within the second project, there have been 8 different powders investigated. Nominally, they have been the same. In fact, they had been showing some variations. For instance, iron content varied between 0.04 to 0.25, so a factor of 6. Together, the carbon concentration was increased with the higher iron content samples, and oxygen was quite similar for all, maybe slightly increasing. It's difficult to say. So the influence of these material compositions on the mechanical properties was not that pronounced for the yield strength. So you see in black similar values for all and no clear tendencies. So with R square 0.06, there's no really linear fit. On the other hand, we saw that the elongation at break, which is a measure for ductility, was decreased with higher iron content. So here we have clear tendency that higher iron makes the material less ductile. As a conclusion, there are various effects. So the supplier does play a role. I named here 2 samples. We named here the 2 samples, but there could be A and B, and next lot could be different again. So not one is bad or good. But humidity is definitely something you have to reduce. Sieving had no influence in this case, but the composition definitely had. We had seen that there were some pores all over the samples. So that's a material property which we have to face when dealing with 3D printed materials. Often we had martensitic grain structure, which is different from the alpha-beta grain structure we usually face using these materials. And we have seen that the orientation really plays a role, so it's not really homogeneously in both directions, the properties. So material properties do differ from the bulk material of forged alloys, so this has to be taken into account when designing and producing something. Nevertheless, it's I'm describing all the negative points, but of course, if you do face it and if you do correct dimensioning, then you can produce nice parts which can help a lot. So you have to take it into account that material properties are different and you have to do the dimensioning accordingly. And last but not least, you have to do the testing to make sure that your product is fulfilling what it should do. And then it's a good thing. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm happy to take your questions.
Question? The audience?
Great talk, Roman. Thank you. I just have a small questions. I've seen many times that people using this technique try to eliminate at the end the small particles that we have on the surface. But being old or mature or experienced, call it as you want, I remember in the 80s and 90s, people were putting balls to simulate the integration. It was a porous coating. And I just wonder why people don't try to eliminate these small balls on the surface, because it was exactly what the industry were trying to do 30 years ago. Do you see what I mean?
Yes. So it always depends on the application.
Yeah.
And it depends where these particles or balls might go at the end. So if I have a hip implant, we have we have good examples from company Mattis. They do the kind of particle embedding of the shell. They had excellent results.
It works.
It works very well. It's one of the best, also showing high survival rates. So it works. But we had also performed hip simulator studies, simulating what happens if these particles are getting into the articulation. And of course, if you have titanium particles within the articulation, it's not ideal, but they're embedded into the polymer, doing some scratches on the balls. But since titanium is softer than the steel or ceramic ball, this effect was not that pronounced. And then you have basically a metal-metal articulation until the titanium is rubbed away. Titanium is not that dangerous, so not affecting the body too much, of course, but it's a risk.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other question? Okay, I have one.
Yeah.
What's your opinion? They are not going to manufacture some hip implants because there is some holes in the structure. It's difficult to manufacture a good alloy. Good alloy means without pores, especially for mechanical structure and mechanical property of the alloy. It's a good way for forging industry and forging manufacture. There is a good future for this structure, for this kind of structure. What's your opinion about that? Are they going to disappear? Are they going to?
No. Well, as long as something is relatively cheaply produced by the classical industry, there's no need to produce it by additive manufacturing. So that's not the niche product you want to go with additive manufacturing. I see it rather in very complex structures which have not the high load, so not the very highly demanded parts of an implant or of a product. Then it's great. Then it can do its job when we've seen the mandible or on the head, some reparations. So there, with the patient-specific implants, it's a good market. That you don't have the very high load, but with a hip stem, you have the high demand, and that's not really worth following. That you would need kind of double the dimension, and and what's the benefit of printing a full material? That's not what it's cool for.
Yeah, sure. Okay. No question. Okay, no demand. I have a second question. Sorry. Um, as you said, it's so expensive, additive manufacturing. What do you think about the biological 3D printing? For example, is there, for mimicking cartilage, is there any future, any opportunity to, what's your opinion about that?
I'm not an expert on that. It's pretty difficult to print organs. I know there's research going on into that
Yeah.
direction.
I'm sure you saw some developments because there is on the public.
Research is good, and maybe something develops out of that. But even artificial cartilage or something is still not really that. But not so far yet. We always thought, okay, next 10 years it will be done, but another 10 years, another 10 years, another 10 years. So, yeah.
Okay, we will have to see. Okay, good.
Maybe one day, but yeah.
Okay. No question. Okay, I have a sub question. I'm sorry. What's your opinion and what you are thinking about the development of some implants? Imagine you are on the board of Hermes, and on the board they are going to ask you what's your opinion in 40 years. There is no implant. There will be no implant because they might reproduce maybe some bone and some cartilage, and maybe we are going to get no implant. Is it true? Is it false? Is it a dream? Is it out the scope? What's your opinion about that? No implant in 40 years.
So,
is it false? True?
No implant is difficult because there are also accidents happening. So you need sometimes a fast preparation. So, but maybe osteoarthritis, there's a mean to treat it in 40 years. That could be, but it's quite visionary. So I'm skeptical that it will work, but never say no.
Okay, maybe. You hope so.
Because we have been thinking about that when I was still a market. Are we going to be out of trouble? Some station says, no, we're not going to be out of trouble. Today, in operation, surgery, and parents and everything. So make as cheap as any biological events and do it. Unless, of course, we find a cure for osteoarthritis, but then you have to start a cancer.
A good future, a good perspective. Okay, thank you. No question more. Okay, thank you so much for your presentation.